Emma, you remember you're going to be all the way in the back. Literally.
Oh, there we go. It didn't come up what you said.
It's just you and not hers.
She'll come in like just a
Okay.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us. We're out here at the safari park today with, oh gosh, I already forgot their names, Siri,
Yamakani.
And as you all know me, I'm Jenna Stacy Dawes, or better known as J Stacy Dawes if you've been following the talk section. Thank you all so much. This is really a kind of an event to say thank you so much for helping us reach our goal of 500,000 images classified. It's such a huge accomplishment, and we can't say thank you enough. So this is really an event to thank you all and answer any of the questions you guys have. Unfortunately, David O'Connor couldn't join us today, but I'll be answering any of the questions you have. So if you just answer or post your questions in the comment section. Sorry, it's a little difficult to keep a train of thought right now. But if you just post your questions in the comment section, we'll try and get to all of them. And just to quickly introduce some of the people that you may see kind of walking into the live shot. We have Lee right here, who is works at the safari park, and he knows a lot about the giraffe tower we have at the park. So he may be kind of moving them back out of our way and answering any questions you guys have specifically about the giraffe here. And then just to quickly introduce Nikki, you may have noticed her kind of posts on the website as well. So Nikki is a researcher on the project. She does a lot of the data analysis for Zooniverse, so a lot of the classifications that you guys pull down and you tell us what's in those images, Nikki will go through that data on a program called R, and she'll help us really try and make sense of the classifications.
Yeah.
Want to tell them a little bit about your work on R?
Sure, yeah. I mean, Jenna just summed it up pretty well, but I analyze a lot of the data that you all classify, and it's really making a huge progress for our project, and we appreciate it so much. So thank you for all your hard work, and we'll keep doing our job on the back end to make sure that all that data gets analyzed, and we'll get those results to you as soon as we can.
So quickly, I know we'll kind of wait for some other questions to come in, but I know we had a couple questions kind of floating on the site. So one of them was, why aren't all of the animals that we see in the photos listed in that classification list? And one of the reasons is because we just didn't expect to see them. So for a long time, we didn't have tortoise listed as a choice on that classification list, and we really just didn't know that tortoises would trigger the cameras. And so once we kind of started seeing a bunch of leopard tortoises in our shots, we added them to that classification list. Another one is steenbok. So we didn't include steenbok. We really didn't expect to find them in those areas. And so that's a huge discovery, a really exciting find. That's kind of one of the reasons why they're not included in that classification list. And then another question you guys had is, why don't we just add steenbok to that list? And the reason is because we don't want to add it in the middle of an active workflow, because that can kind of mess with our data a little bit. We don't want to have some of the images that have steenbok actually be tagged as a steenbok, and then the other ones kind of classified as nothing here. So it would mess us up to kind of put it in the middle of a workflow. And that's why you'll see sometimes when we add new images or a new workflow to the site, we'll add additional species that you all helped us identify. So that's really, really exciting. Another question I know some people had is, have we made any really exciting or new discoveries from this site? And the answer is yes. You guys helped us identify that there was steenbok in the area. We also recently found a wildcat, which was really, really exciting. They're highly elusive, and we don't get to see them a lot, so it was really, really exciting to actually see them on those images. Another one was one of the leopards that showed up in one of these images. Was actually a leopard that had already been identified by the Leopard Project on Loisaba Conservancy. So that was really, really exciting. So you guys actually are really helping us make new discoveries and helping us kind of understand more about the wildlife in these areas.
Yes, Marianne wants to know, can you add a go back button to the photo identification?
So Marianne was asking if we can add a go back button. Unfortunately, so we work on the platform Zooniverse, and so we're kind of limited by what we can do on that platform. We can definitely suggest it to them, but another reason why we don't really like to have the option for I don't know or go back is because we want you to take your best guess. We have an image viewed 10 different times, so a single image is viewed by 10 different people, and so we're able to take the best guess. So even if you don't know, if you can't tell that that blob may be a hyena or maybe that foot is a giraffe foot, that's okay, because 9 other people will view that image and take a guess as well. And sometimes we can't even tell what's in an image. So it's really good just to take your best guess, and sometimes we just will never know.
We have a question about the giraffes here. You want Lee answer that? From Yakima. She wants to know, there are 2 giraffes that are not here, Mara and
Zinzi.
Zinzi.
Yes, they're in our South African exhibit. We're in our East African exhibit right now, and those are Maasai giraffes. They were transferred here from Houston Zoo, and they're doing well and getting acclimated to that herd.
Do you have any other questions? Think of some of the other questions everyone has. A lot of the questions are about where are these cameras. So currently we have our cameras placed across Loisaba Conservancy and Namanyuk Conservancy, and those are both conservancies in northern Kenya. And on each of these conservancies we have a grid system. So we made a grid on a computer and designed an evenly spaced grid, so they're about 2 kilometers apart. And then every month we'll randomly select positions on that grid. And that's where you place the cameras. So a lot of the times you can kind of see they're randomly placed across the conservancies. And that's how we get kind of an even distribution. We can look at where these animals are occurring, when they're occurring, and we'll hopefully have an even sampling coverage every single year. Something happening over there. Do you have any other questions?
Just the amount of work that was done over the past year, how has that really benefited us?
Yeah, so the amount of work, so our research team is pretty small here, and so it would have taken us years to go through 500,000 images 10 different times. It's absolutely incredible. And we can really start to look at the areas where we're seeing giraffe occur most often, the areas where we're seeing the most diversity of wildlife, and we can also look into the interactions between humans and livestock, or sorry, giraffe and livestock. So we can take all of the images that you've classified as having livestock in them, as well as all of the images that you've classified as having giraffe, and see if they're occurring in the same locations, if giraffe are avoiding the areas where the livestock are, if we're seeing kind of areas where giraffe are occurring most frequently, so kind of giraffe hotspot areas. So we can really start to look into that data and try and figure out if we're seeing any trends. Are there areas on both of these conservancies that maybe we should be protecting more, that are critical giraffe habitat? So those are just some of the analysis that we can produce from your data, so from the classifications that you guys have been doing. And hopefully we'll be able to produce some of those results by World Giraffe Day, which is June 21st, so about 6 weeks away, I believe. So that's really, really exciting, and it would have taken us, as I said, years to go through this data, and so having your help is really beneficial because we can go through this data a lot faster and start to make those conclusions faster than we ever could without your help.
The question is that the project, while the Wildwatch Kenya is a big project, it's a part of a larger tracking project that San Diego Global does. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this Wildwatch Kenya project is part of our reticulated giraffe initiative in northern Kenya. So the trail cameras are just part of this work. So we have a team on the ground called the Twiga Walinzi, which means giraffe guards in Swahili. If you go into the project update section or the about section, you can see all their pictures and get to know a little bit about them. But we have 10 individuals on Namanyuk Conservancy and 3 individuals on Loisaba Conservancy. And so they go out every day and they'll maintain these trail cameras. but they'll also do photo monitoring surveys. So they'll go out on defined transects and take pictures of giraffe. And we can use those individual pictures to help create a database of individuals that we can recognize by their unique coat patterns. They'll also go out and do distance sampling transects, so along those same predefined transects, and they'll count any animal that they see on those transects. And so this can really help us kind of identify the diversity in these landscapes, kind of look at the areas that have the most animal activity, and really start to see the areas where a lot of animals are occurring. They also go out and work with the community, so they'll conduct community outreach surveys and human dimension surveys to really understand people's perceptions of giraffe and the levels of meat consumption or part use in those areas. We also go out, or they go out, and work with the communities, educate children about giraffe, about conservation. So this really is kind of a really large project to save reticulated giraffe, and the trail cameras are just kind of part of that.
Okay, is the project finished?
No, the project is not finished. I don't know if that's a good thing, but we have about, I want to say almost 500,000 images left, and then another 500,000 images from this year being collected. So our trail cameras are still in the field, so we still are collecting data. So every time we go over to the field, we pick up new hard drives and pick up new photos. So we're in the process of uploading a new round of images. They should be live either today or tomorrow, I believe. And so hopefully you'll be able to find a lot more species and keep classifying.
Okay. Before we go to the next Wildwatch Kenya question, somebody wanted to know the difference between Maasai and reticulated giraffe.
So the best way to tell, I think, is that reticulated giraffe look very, very clean and organized. Their patterns are very kind of distinct. They're very kind of clear blotches with a stark white background. I think they're the prettiest. But Maasai giraffe, which are also found in Kenya, have more kind of sharp, jagged blotches, so they look kind of like oak leaves. They're pretty easy. Those two are pretty easy to tell apart just because they are so distinct. And that's kind of my way of identifying them.
Okay. The next one is still about the back button. Could you go ahead and restate the reason why we don't have a back button or can't have one? And somebody wants to know what happens if someone misidentifies an animal.
Yeah, so those are both really good questions, and kind of explain why we don't have a back button. So we really want you to take your best guess. And so we don't have a back button because we don't want you to second guess yourself. We want you to just take your best guess and say what you think in images. A lot of the times it's really hard to tell, and even with our expert opinions, we can't even tell what's in an image. And so if someone misidentifies, that's okay, because we have 10 different people looking at every single image. And so if one person says that's an elephant and then 9 other people say it's a giraffe, we'll take the best guess. And so that would be a giraffe. And so that's why we have so many people looking at an image, and why we really have you take your best guess. And Nikki, do you want to explain a little bit more how you do that on R?
Sure. So a lot of what I do is actually pull down this data from Zooniverse's platform. So it'll come out in kind of an Excel file that has all the information about, for one image, the 10 different classifications that were made for that one image. And I can start to look at, through computer coding, what most people said was in that image and at what level of accuracy. So sometimes there's an image that's clear as day, that was definitely a giraffe, and even sometimes all 10 people will say that's a giraffe. But sometimes, you know, if it's a night image or the species is far in the background, it'll be all over the place. You know, someone could say giraffe, someone could say elephant, someone could even say lion, and it's really hard sometimes to tell what's in these images, so then the accuracy will actually go down. So a lot of what I do is try to determine, okay, well, at what accuracy level can we say that species is certainly in that photo? So it's really a process where we're doing a lot of testing, and I get to go through a lot of the images myself. But like Jenna's been saying, it wouldn't be possible without all of you. So we're really, through all those 10 classifications, getting a very accurate count of what is in all of these images.
Okay. There is a question about why they're not able to click on the classification button right now.
So right now, thanks to all of your help, we actually finished all of the images in that last upload. So I believe there's about 331,000, which is a huge number and absolutely amazing that we finished that last upload. So every time those images are retired, we have to upload a new set of photos. And so that's why you can't classify right now, because we're in the process of uploading that new round of photos. And so we don't have any on the site right now, but they're in the process of being uploaded right now. So within the next day or so, you should have a whole new batch of images. I believe it's something around 230,000 images that'll be put onto the site, which is also why the upload is taking a bit of time. But hopefully within the next day or two, you'll be able to see a whole new batch of photos and help us identify more animals.
Okay, this is a question for Lee about the zebras. Do we have any zebras at the park? And if so, why aren't they in the same exhibit with all the other animals?
We do have zebras at the park, and historically zebras tend not to play well with others. So we have special arrangements where they don't get in trouble with the other animals. So we do have zebras at the park, but it's not in with the other animals.
Okay. So what is the next step for the site, for the program, the project?
So the next step is uploading more of these photos, which I said will be done in the next couple days, and continuing to classify and process those images. The reason why we have so many images that still need to be processed is because we try and have our cameras out throughout the year. We really want to know how these species are distributed across the conservancies all throughout the year. In some areas they may favor one location due to water, maybe during the rainy season they're more spread out, and that stuff we just don't know yet about giraffes. We don't know the areas that they favor, what habitat is critical for them, and so we're trying to keep our cameras out in the field as long as we can to really make these conclusions, and that's why we have so much data, because our cameras have been out in the field for about 2.5 years now. So I believe in total we have about 1.5 million images that need to be processed, and so we're a third of the way there, which is amazing, but we still have a long way to go. And so the next steps are really to start making conclusions from the 500,000 images that have been processed, is starting to look at the trends that we're seeing in the data. Are we seeing any trends? And that will kind of help us lead towards our next steps. Are there areas that we need to protect? Do we need to favor these areas? Are we seeing giraffe favor this certain habitat, this certain soil? And so we can start to make those conclusions from this data.
Okay. Question about the park. Can the giraffes go inside? And how many species of zebras, and how can you tell one from the other?
Lee, you might have to take that one.
Okay. We have the Grevy's zebras at the park, which is a very endangered species. They have different striping patterns. I'm not quite sure I could explain the different types of stripes on the different zebras. And what was the other part to that question?
And the giraffes, do they go inside?
The giraffes, we have the ability to put them inside. Pan up to the boma in the background. That would be an isolation area we could use for any of the species. The giraffes, we can definitely go there if we need them to, but typically they spend every day and every night out here in the field.
Thank you.
To answer that question about zebras really quick, in regards to our Wildwatch Kenya site, we'll have 2 different zebras that may appear in those images. So there's plain zebra and there's also Grevy's zebra. So how you can tell these two apart is plain zebras, their striping is much wider. Grevy's zebra, their stripes are much closer together, and they also have really big fluffy ears with kind of a white line across their ears. And so that's kind of how you can tell these 2 species apart, and those are the 2 species that we will have at Loisaba and Namibia Conservancies that may appear in our trail camera images.
Back to the site itself. You were saying that they have more images with nothing there photos. Why is that?
Yeah, so we do have a ton of nothing here images, and unfortunately that's just part of kind of trail cameras. there's a lot of technologies now trying to kind of weed out those nothing here images, but a lot of these trail cameras can be triggered by false positives. So a branch moving in the wind, grass is blowing. At Loisaba Conservancy, it's a lot of grassland habitat, and so we do have a lot of nothing here images that are triggered by grass blowing in the wind. Sometimes if there's a fast moving animal like a bird or something small that doesn't trigger the camera, that goes by the camera really fast, that'll trigger it, and then we end up with a nothing here image. And sometimes when it's really, really hot outside, that will trigger the camera as well. And working in northern Kenya, where it's right on the equator, especially in Namanyuk Conservancy, it gets really, really hot. And so sometimes we have false positives triggered by that as well. And so that's why we end up with so many nothing here images, and that's why it's so critical that we ask for your help, because it just takes us as a research team so long to go through these images and so long to process them. And that's why we developed this Wildwatch Kenya site, to really try and ask for your help to help us go through those. It's not as fun to go through the nothing here, but I kind of feel like it makes the wildlife sightings even more special when you come across a giraffe, or when all of a sudden you see a leopard. So that's kind of, I always say I'm gonna stop and then I'll get a giraffe, and then I keep going. I'm like, oh, I'll just wait until I get an elephant. And so thank you for bearing with us. We're trying to figure out how to weed out those nothing heres. We're actually going to the field in June, and we're kind of testing out with our cameras different methods to try and eliminate some of those nothing here. Hopefully it brings the number down a bit, but unfortunately there's no way to really eliminate them completely.
Someone asked about the cameras that are consistently showing nothings. Do we ever think about moving them?
Yeah, so that's actually just as important. So when we're seeing these areas that are consistently showing nothing, that tells us a lot. Why are we not seeing animals there? Is it lack of resources? Is there not a lot of food? Is there not a lot of water? Maybe it's close to a human settlement. Are there livestock grazing in this area? So we can actually look from those images that we're seeing nothing and having low volumes of animals, and really start to figure out why. Why are we seeing such low volumes? And maybe look further into what's causing that. So it can tell us just as much as an area that has a high volume of animals, by looking at maybe why they're not occurring in those areas.
And there are some questions about us and other projects. One question is, do we feel like there is competition with other projects? Because now started with Wildwatch Kenya, they get tons of emails from other projects.
Yeah, so no, the more projects you can contribute to, that's great. You're helping all of these projects in different ways, and so we don't mind at all if you help. There's no competition. It really is just for fun, and so however much time you can dedicate to this project is so appreciated, and we wouldn't be anywhere without your help. We really, really appreciate the volume and the amount of images that you all have been able to process. As I mentioned, our research team is pretty small, and so we would be nowhere close to this amount of images without your help.
Delilah has a technical question. She says, any chance we'll get the 3 rapid succession photos like other projects? Sometimes initial pics show nothing, but the second later shows someone is caught.
Yeah, so that's actually another thing that we're hoping to test out in the field in June. That's not actually something that we can just kind of change right now with our cameras. It's a setting on the actual cameras, and so we can set the camera so then when it is triggered, it takes 3 successive photos. And when you see 3 successive photos, it's a little bit easier if something's walking into the frame, or maybe something is blurry in one frame, maybe it's clear in the other. And so we have looked at that. Other projects seem to do really well with those 3 successive images. And so we're hoping to trial that in June when we go out to the field. Our only concern is that maybe the nothing here images will end up with 3 times as many. And so that's what we're hoping to do, and hoping to trial it out to see if we end up with a lot more nothing here images, or if it's worth kind of allowing you guys to maybe see what's walking into a frame. So that's definitely something, and thanks to your suggestions, that we're trialing out in June when we go to the field.
Tina has a question. Are the people in the images aware of the purpose of the cameras, and do they know their image is being recorded?
Yeah, so that's actually a really, really good question. We do a lot of community outreach in the conservancies where we have these cameras, and it's for that reason. We want people to be involved in the project. This really is a community-led project. So while we're kind of talking about it right now, we're not doing a lot of the research. We have an on-the-grounds team that we're just kind of helping. So we're helping develop the site and process the images, but they're the ones doing the research. It's their project, and so we really want the community involved. And so we do a lot of outreach. Our Twiggable Lindsay team will go to these communities with the cameras and show them the cameras, show them the pictures that we're taking so they know what they're for, and help protect them for us. So a lot of the images that people are looking at the cameras, they've never seen them before. It's kind of weird. I know when I see a trail camera, when I'm hiking, I do want to investigate it. It's weird when you see a camera in the middle of nowhere. And so that's a lot of time what they're doing. And we do have, so if there's a picture of a person on the site, we will retire it after one person classifies it as a human, just for privacy reasons. So we do have to put them on the site just because they have to be weeded out somehow, but they are retired after one person classifies it as a human.
Okay. And then the last question, because we're just about out of time. This is another technical question. One of the other projects had a sub-categorization flow where one is something or nothing, the other is vehicle or not, and the third is the regular one. Have you seen that system before, and would we think of using that?
Yeah, so I actually, part of my job when we were developing the site was going on a bunch of different projects and really looking at what they're doing and what's working and what would work for us. And so I did go on that project and I did a lot of those classifications, and that was something we discussed doing. But we were kind of wondering about the efficiency. Would a lot of people classify the nothing here images and how that would work for us? At this point, we think what we're doing is working all right. We are kind of still developing the project though and trying to see what our options are and how we can make it better. So we love all of your suggestions and feedback. Definitely keep telling us because it really does help and helps us go look at those other projects and see what they're doing that's making it so successful. But I do think we are out of time right now. Thank you all so much for joining us, and really thank you so much again for all of your help. And please keep classifying. They should be up in the next few days, and I really hope you get to see some amazing animals.